Good day, folks. It's been a blast to be here this time around, and I'm really glad that we're going to have a chance to present some of the research. I'm Mike Toecker. I am an INL Department of Energy subject matter expert for exercises. So I've been working with the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency on a very interesting project called RADICS, and I'm not going to go through the full acronym. RADICS is about coming back from this, all right, a large, significant cyber attack that finds its way somehow through all of our best defenses and finds a way to black out the grid. And the reason why is because DARPA asked the hard problems in order to ensure that our nation is capable of responding effectively with our military forces overseas. And the best way to do that is to ensure that we have adequate critical infrastructure support when we're at home. The reason why there is a significant risk to critical infrastructure. The Department of Defense believes this, DARPA believes this. This is the genesis of the actual RADICS program itself. Part of this is that we recognize that at some point we may need additional support in order to recover from an incident like this. And this is a problem for us because mission effectiveness is directly related to the effectiveness of our bases. And if our bases don't have power, it's very difficult for us to go forth and defend the homeland. So the genesis of this program about 4 years ago came from this, let's assume a cyber attack has happened. This is, as I think many of us have heard before, the post-boom type discussion. And so if this happens, how best do we recover from it? What tools do we need? What support is required? And when is that most effectively used? And so the genesis of this is we have started with a complete blackout. We understand that this attack has potentially compromised systems in a way that we may not fully understand at that time. And at some point, the blackout has continued for a certain amount of time to the point where our effectiveness is no longer certain anymore. And the intent is that we want to detect the specific type of attack. We want advanced capabilities in order to do this. We want to figure out exactly what has happened, what has been targeted, and what are the things that we need to focus on in order to most effectively use what are potentially limited resources if this attack has been ongoing. Secondly, we want to be able to isolate it from everything else. And we want to be able to enable some capabilities at that point on the networking side so that we can once again restore systems to full use, even if those underlying systems are not fully trusted. We want to characterize this threat. We want to figure out exactly how it affected things. We want to figure out exactly why it's affecting things. We want to be able to dig deep into the actual systems themselves and say, this is what it does. We know it, we understand it, and now we can ferret it out. We can pull it out of this system. We can restore this system to service again. So part of the genesis of this is that the way that DARPA tests its technology is that we put our technology into realistic scenarios. And in order to do this, we figured out that the best way to do this was to build our own grid, a realistic grid populated with systems that you can see at a substation across the road. And then we bring our performers out. And so this is the genesis of the Plum Island project, where we basically built a grid out on Plum Island. We have 3 realistic utilities. We have substations that are populated with about 90% of the equipment that you will find from, 90% of the vendors that you will find in a normal substation. Everything is configured in a similar manner to what you would find out in the real world. We have protection configurations. We have network configurations. Everything is set up to go back to a SCADA control center. And then on the power side as well, we've also we actually have generators. And we are powering this grid, and the grid itself powers the substations. You lose power at one of our generators, you lose power at your substation after battery backup, and you go to battery backup. So this RADICS exercise infrastructure is from our most recent exercise, exercise 6. We have 17 total substations linked together in an island-wide grid. We have 3 generators And we also have what we call we have a natural gas pipeline. All right, not a real one. We are actually simulating that natural gas pipeline in order to show that there are dependencies associated with critical infrastructure out in the power sector. What I'm here to talk about today, however, is the fact that we have brought Plum Island out to S4. We are currently up on the third floor. We have brought out all of our technology partners, all right, those who have been developing our tools. We brought out a small-scale mock-up of our test bed as well. And we invite you to come up and talk with us about what we've been developing. And the types of technologies that we've been developing that we believe are the best things that are going to be used during an actual black start situation where we're recovering from a significant cyber attack fall into these specific technology areas. Number one, situational awareness. We need to find out what is out there. We need to be able to identify what systems it's affected. And to that point, we have our technology partners here. We have Perspecta Labs, which will be up there. We have work from NRECA with their grid state monitoring. And all of these pieces allow us to not only look into what's going on the network itself, but we can also look at the power systems as well. And as part of that, we also have BBN technologies out, which allows us to get a wide-scale view of how the grid is actually coming back after this particular cyber event. And it tells us in an out-of-band manner how that grid is coming back. So we have several performers up there. The next one up is that we assume that telecommunications networks that we normally rely on in order to do SCADA communications, voice communications, as well as the internet, are down during this. So we think we have to set up a secure emergency network as well. Upstairs as well, we have one of our performers with BAE Systems. We'll be discussing what we've developed on the secure emergency network side, the ability to go in and establish a network after an incident that supports SCADA communications, voice communications, as well as supports the particular needs of forensics while we're out on island, but also if we ever needed to in the real world. And all of them are separate networks. And then last but not least, we have our third area, and this is for the technologies being developed, our threat analysis part. So the intent here is to be able to get very deep into the devices that run our grid, be able to characterize what's currently running on them, divide good from bad, and figure out how to pull that badness out of that system to restore it to service, rather than just pulling it and putting in a new system without having an understanding of what affected it in the first place. All of these technologies are part of a test bed. And the test bed itself was developed by the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign, and we have a small-scale mock-up of what you will actually see up on Plum Island there as well. This test bed is what we use across the island to deploy our technologies against. This is what the attackers went after, in other words. And then part of this as well is our exercise and evaluation program. This is being run by Provatech, and Provatech has developed an exercise program that allows our technology areas, our researchers, to test their technologies up against realistic attacks. And we've also used it within the Department of Energy and the Department of Homeland Security in order to pair on actual response techniques as well. The best tools in the world must be utilized by us. How do we best utilize them? How do we best bring them to bear? Is another hard problem that we're attempting to evaluate at Plum Island as well. So I really invite you, come on up to the third floor. We'll take you on a tour of Plum Island. We'll show you the technologies that we've developed to defend and restore the grid to an operational state to ensure that America continues our effective mission both here and overseas. And thank you very much.